One major question mark each NFL draft combine invitee for the Texas Longhorns has to answer in this offseason leading up to the NFL draft.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis, your host. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. On today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, we are discussing the 11 NFL Draft Combine invitees from the Texas Longhorns. One major question mark that each player has to answer. This article was written by Inside Texas, and so I'm reacting to this article on Locked On Longhorns from Inside Texas once again. And then in the last two segments, the baseball team and the basketball team both played over the weekend. The baseball team, 3 consecutive shutouts, sweeping Cal Poly. Basketball team did not fare as well. We discuss all of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So I've said all offseason, I'll continue to say it, that we continue to get more and more confirmation bias that this is one of the most talented rosters we've ever seen at the 40 acres, right? And I think the latest major confirmation bias we've gotten is that 11 players have been invited to the NFL Draft Combine, right? And we knew that at least 7 players, I think, from this 2023 roster would get drafted, tying the record for Texas Longhorns in 2007 in the 7th-round draft. And I've said multiple times on the podcast that I think this year Texas breaks the record, right? Because I don't see a scenario in which 8 players don't get drafted. And I think up to 10 players could be selected in this year's NFL draft. But 11 players from the Longhorns football team will be invited to the NFL Draft Combine, which I think is crazy. And I think it's something that we have the momentum, we recruit well enough to do, and we develop well enough to do, right? If we continue to win at a high level on the football field, I don't see a reason why we can't have 6 to 7 players drafted every year from the Texas football team, especially with the transfer portal and us getting a lot of, upperclassmen coming in already. And then why we won't be able to send double-digit players to the NFL Combine every year, right? Hopefully 2023/2024 is the first of many under Steve Sarkisian at the 40 acres. So once again, Inside Texas wrote an article asking a major question or presenting a major question that each NFL Draft Combine invitee, all 11 of them from the Texas Longhorns, has to answer. Here we go. The first one is Jonathan Brooks. The question is, how's the knee, right? I think that's a very important question because I think on the field, when Jonathan Brooks was playing, right, he was the clear favorite to win the Doak Walker Award, right? I think in 10 games, he had 1,139 yards, and he looked like the best running back, on the field, and a sneaky Heisman contender, right? And most sites are, Mel Kiper Jr., most people that cover the draft have Jonathan Brooks as the #1 running back in the NFL draft, right? But obviously he's dealing with the injury and he won't be available. And the best ability in the National Football League is availability, right? So he has to prove to teams that his knee is healthy enough to still be the first running back selected and still maximize his earning potential, right, as being the first running back selected, right? Because the higher selected, the more money you make. And I just think there's a little bit of pride that comes with being the first running back taken in your respective draft class, right? Just like Bijan Robinson can say that for the rest of his life. But teams will know that he won't be able to participate in his pro day or the combine. He won't be ready for OTAs. I would think because he tore his ACL in November, didn't have surgery until late November, early December, that he wouldn't be ready at the start of training camp, right? And then you don't know how healthy or how comfortable he'll be throughout the season, right? But I think if Jonathan Brooks still wants to maintain his status as the #1 running back in the draft, if he wants to be the first running back selected in the NFL draft, I think he has to assure NFL teams that at least by the middle of training camp, he'll be able to get back on the field, right? If he can't get back on the field by the middle of training camp, even though he may be the best running back in the draft, I'm not sure he'll be the first running back that a team will invest in if they don't have the assurance that he will be ready to go on the field throughout training camp. So the biggest question Jonathan Brooks has to answer is, how is your knee? For Keelan Robinson, what do you offer away from special teams, right? We've talked a bunch about how the running back position is devalued, but I think it's devalued in terms of taking running backs high in the draft, using high draft capital on them, even though we saw Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson go top 12 last year, and spending high dollar on those running backs in terms of big contracts, right? We're not seeing that in the National Football League anymore. But to win, you have to have a strong running game and you have to have really good running backs. But I think there's a surplus of really good running backs or running backs that can make a difference in the league. I do not think Keenan Robinson will get drafted. I don't think he's put enough on tape or just has enough physical prowess, I guess, to convince an NFL team to invest in him or to draft in him. And I think on a 53-man roster, which every team carries, you're probably carrying no more than 3 running backs, right? So there's 96 potential spots, in my opinion, for running backs in the National Football League. How can Keenan Robinson prove that he deserves to be on a spot or deserves to be acknowledged as one of the 96 best running backs in the National Football League without special teams entering the conversation, right? Because obviously he's good at special teams, but that's not enough to get drafted, right? That's not enough to be carried on a 53-man roster. What do you bring to the table in terms of the running back position that 96 other running backs in the NFL don't bring? Not sure how he'll answer that question, but that is a question mark he has to answer at the combine if he wants to move up and get drafted and have an opportunity to make a name for himself in the National Football League. Adonai Mitchell, are you first round good? I think right now Adonai Mitchell is squarely sitting between late first round, early second round. And I think the thing that will push him into the first round is how he tests, right? I think when you watch the film, there's a little bit of inconsistency with Adonai Mitchell, but for the most part, he's dominant, especially in the biggest games and the biggest moments when you need a big catch. That's when Adonai Mitchell shows up, right? And he has all the makings of a #1 wide receiver in the National Football League. The way he contorts his body, the way he goes up and makes those tough contested catches, the way he shines in the biggest moments, he can be a #1 wide receiver in the National Football League. But we know, right, as far as the offseason, it's all about interviews and it's all about what you do in shorts, right? And if Adonai Mitchell wants to prove himself to be a first-round NFL wide receiver, it all comes down to what he does at the NFL Combine. He's put first round on tape, but it still comes down to what he does at the Combine. If he tests in the 4.5 range, if he doesn't have a great vertical or broad jump or whatever else they're looking at, that could push him into the second round, where if he runs like a 4.4 or faster and test out of his mind at the NFL Combine, I think he's a lock to be a first-round pick. So I think he's already put first-rounder on tape, but does he have first-round measurables? And I think we'll find that out at the NFL Combine. That'll be the difference between Adonai Mitchell being a first- or second-round draft pick. Jordan Whittington, do you have an elite physical trait? I think this is a good question for Jordan Whittington because I think he's a really good NFL receiver. I think he's somebody like a Puka Nacua. He probably won't get drafted in the 5th round, but I think he's somebody like a Puka Nacua that when he gets into an NFL program and he starts performing against, defenders and performing in front of offensive coaches, he'll be somebody that you have to take a look at and try to get somebody you have to try to get on the field, right? I think he's just that good of a player, that explosive, but I don't think he's somebody that's going to test well at the NFL Combine, right? Just because that's not his game. He's more of a physical kind of possession receiver, right? And I'm not sure that he has enough production at the college level mixed in with some injury history to convince an NFL team that he's worth more than a 5th round, draft pick, right? So I think the question that Jordan Whittington has to answer for NFL teams is, can you jump off the screen with your measurables, right? Can you be explosive? Can you be a game-changing type of NFL wide receiver? I'm not sure he'll be able to prove that at the NFL Combine. I think he's an NFL game-changing type of receiver, but he'll make a lot more money if he can prove that at the NFL Combine rather than proving it once he's already in the building after somebody took a chance on him. So that's the question he has to answer at the NFL Combine. Are his measurables worth being drafted in the first 5 to 6 rounds of the NFL draft, or is he going to have to prove himself against all odds as an undrafted free agent or 7th round NFL draft pick? Xavier Worthy, how fast can he run at the NFL draft combine? I think this is key. I think that when you're looking at purely what Xavier Worthy has put on tape, I think I would take him in the 2nd round. That's just me being honest, right? I love Xavier Worthy, love what he's done for the last 3 years at the University of Texas. But I think if we're looking at purely what he's put on tape, I would take him in the 2nd round because he does not look like, to me, a #1 wide receiver that you could build your offense around. But speed changes everything. And if he comes out and runs like a 4.32 or faster, right, I know that's tough, right? But if he comes out and runs a 4.32 faster, there's no doubt in my mind that he'll be a 1st round pick, right? Speed kills, and you can do a lot with speed in the National Football League. Right now, I think Xavier Worthy is a 2nd round pick. If he runs a 4.32 or faster, you're going to have to, think long and hard about taking Xavier Worthy in the 1st round. Jatavian Sanders, are you tight end 2, right? I think obviously Brock Bowers is tight end 1. Obviously Brock Bowers is going to be the first tight end taken. But who will be the next tight end taken, right? And I think that right now, that spot is Jatavian Sanders. Obviously, I'm biased. I think that spot should go to Jatavian Sanders. But I think Jatavian Sanders still has work to do to make sure that he's the 2nd tight end taken, right? And this all comes back to being taken higher in the draft, getting more opportunity, and obviously, expanding your financial capability. The higher you get drafted, the more money you'll make. But I think when you look at his ability to block, which is he's still, progressing in, but he did that at a really high level, especially the last couple of years. And his ability to just be a mismatch problem, strong hands, what he can do after the catch. I mean, what you can do with him in the modern offenses and the way you can manipulate defenses with a player like Ja'Tavion Sanders. I think he just brings all of that to the table. And I think that if he can prove, through workouts and measurables, which he should be able to, that he's the second best tight end at that position behind Brock Bowers, I think that there's not a chance that he lasts past, I'll say, pick 50 to be safe in the NFL draft. I think he's a top 45 to 50 pick unquestionably if he can prove he's tight end 2 in this draft, and I think he will. Christian Jones, offensive lineman. Are you up for guard, right? I think Christian Jones was really good at right tackle at the University of Texas, showed flashes at left tackle, but could never put it together. And we saw in the Senior Bowl that he was getting a lot of reps at right guard, right? And I think the future for Christian Jones, right, especially with, maybe his lack of athleticism and lack of movement skills at the tackle position, dealing with some of the best edge rushers in the world, likely will be to move him inside, right, and see if he can handle himself a little bit better at the guard position, right? But that's not something that you can just seamlessly do, or that's not something that we can just assume that you can do. It's just, make the seamless transition to the guard position, right? You have to go out and do it, learn new terminology, learn new pass sets, learn new run. You have to, rework kind of everything. So if Christian Jones can show that he can be a great guard at the next level, along with tackle, or at least provide some positional versatility, that'll go a long way in terms of him maximizing his financial capability and him maximizing his draft standing coming up into the NFL draft, right? I think he's been good as a tackle in college, but I think he projects better as a guard in the National Football League. Biggest question mark he has to answer is, can he play guard at a high level in the National Football League? Byron Murphy, are you the next Kalijah Kancey? And for people that didn't watch Pittsburgh for the last couple of years in college football, you didn't have a reason to, so I understand it. And for people that don't watch the National Football League, Kalijah Kancey is a smaller defensive tackle, right? And that's the narrative around Byron Murphy, right? I think he's going to go in the first round. I don't think there's any question marks about what type of player he'll be, but he is 6'1" and 308 pounds. And typically you want a bigger player on that defensive line at the defensive tackle position. But I think on tape, Byron Murphy has proved that he's so explosive, right, in the pass rush game, and he's so strong and able to leverage himself so well with his hands and his body in terms of, taking on double teams and getting a push in the run game, that him being 6'1", 308 pounds doesn't matter, right? Because he plays way bigger on tape, and he's a lot more dominant than somebody you would expect to be, who is 6'1" and 308 pounds. So I think that that's what he needs to prove. And I think he's already proved that on tape, and that's why he's going to be a first-round pick. That regardless of him being undersized, he's still the best defensive tackle in the NFL draft. T'Vondre Sweat, just how much do you weigh, right? I think that's why he didn't weigh in at the Senior Bowl, and I think that's what everybody's waiting to see at the NFL draft. I think if T'Vondre Sweat can answer his motor concerns, right, which I think he went a long way to answering those in his last year at the University of Texas, and if he can prove that he can keep his weight in check, then he has a potential to be one of the biggest, literally biggest steals in this NFL draft. But I think if teams have questions about his weight and if that'll be a concern long-term in the National Football League, that's going to cost him some money on draft day. So I think it would benefit him really well, right? It benefit him a lot financially, right? To make sure he keeps his weight in check throughout this draft process, make sure he's in tip-top shape, the best shape of his life. And also, to make sure that he continues to have a future in the National Football League, make sure that this doesn't become a concern at any point in the future, right? Keep the motor high, stay in shape, and be able to play, snap in and snap out, or whenever you're needed at a high level. Jalen Ford, what's your best physical trait? I think he's shown on tape his instincts and just him being able to read and react. He does that at one of the highest levels in the country, if you're talking about linebackers, especially over the last couple of years entering the NFL draft. But now you're going to the NFL, and that's where measurables become a bigger part of the conversation. Is Jalen Ford athletic enough to be one of the best linebackers in the National Football League? I think that's a huge question mark against him right now, something he's going to have to answer at the NFL Draft Combine. And then last one, Ryan Watts, are you willing to make safety work, right? I think Ryan Watts was a really good corner at the University of Texas for us, but there always have been, question marks about his high-end speed and would he be able to, cover wide receivers in all areas of the field with that speed, right? I think he projects better as a safety at the National Football League, right? Because he doesn't have the best athleticism or top end speed. So you'd rather him watching, the quarterback and reacting to the field instead of having to mirror a wide receiver step by step, right? That seems like something that he was better at in college, but once with the step up in, just skill and physical nature and athleticism for these wide receivers in the National Football League, it's probably best if Ryan Watts makes that move to safety, and Inside Texas thinks that's the question mark he's going to have to answer in the draft process is, will you be able to make that switch and play at a high level at the safety position? A quick word from our sponsors, and we get into what the baseball and basketball teams did over the weekend. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. And remember, terms and conditions do apply. All right, we're talking about the Texas baseball team after they beat Houston Christian 20-3 last week. I said that they had a weekend series against Cal Poly, and I was hoping that when I came back on the podcast and talked to you about their weekend series, they'd be 6-1. I expected them to sweep Cal Poly. They swept Cal Poly, and now Texas baseball is 6-1 on the season. But what's better than sweeping Cal Poly is they did not allow a run all weekend, right? Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, they shut out Cal Poly in all 3 games, outscoring them 15-0. So we start with Friday, where Texas got a 2-0 win, and we start with the player of the game. LBJ LeBaron Johnson pitched a gem, quality start, pitching 8 scoreless innings while striking out 8 batters as well. Only allowed 2 hits and 2 walks. And here comes that number 8 again, retired the last 8 batters he faced. So LeBaron Johnson, our ace this year, was dominant on the mound on Friday, holding the Cal Poly, whatever their mascot is, to 0 runs for 8 consecutive innings. And then Gage Bohm got his first save, striking out 2 of the 4 batters he faced to close out the 9th inning and secure the shutout. Jared Thomas drove in a run in the 5th, and Peyton Powell drove in a huge insurance run in the 8th to secure the 2-0 victory. On Saturday, you came back, shut them out once again, but this time the bats were popping just a little bit more. You won 6-0. Charlie Hurley started this game, followed LeBaron Johnson with a quality start of his own, pitching 6 shutout innings. And what I love, he did a really good job of keeping the ball out of the air. 15 of the 18 outs he recorded, either came off strikeouts or ground balls, right? So it's hard to do anything with the ball if you can't hit it out the infield or can't put it in play, period, right? So really good job by Charlie Hurley, forcing a lot of ground ball outs and then getting 3 strikeouts as well. Grant Fontenot and David Shaw recorded the last 9 outs of the game with 6 strikeouts, did allow 3 walks in the last 3 innings, so something we got to clean up. We did see that, I believe, in the first series of the year, they had a problem with some walks, but nonetheless, 6 strikeouts in the last 3 innings is really good, and they didn't give up a run. That's what matters the most. Texas hit 2 separate 2-run homers, one by Jared Thomas and one by Max Bellew, and then scored on an RBI groundout and wild pitch to make it 6-0 and to secure the win of the series. And then they came back on Sunday in the last game of the series, winning 7-0. So they secured the sweep and secured a 3-game shutout of Cal Poly. The first time they've shut out a team in 3 consecutive games since 2015 against Minnesota, and the first time they've swept and shut out a series against 2002. I was 9 years old, against UT Pan American. So Texas baseball team certainly made history this weekend, being able to shut out and sweep Cal Poly through a 3-game series. Cody Howard did not get the quality start, did not get to 6 innings pitched, but did pitch 5 scoreless innings while allowing 7 hits, did a really good job of stranding runners. Also did not allow a walk. So that's a huge reason why he gave up 7 runs in just 5 innings, but did not allow a run. My bad. He gave up 7 hits in just 5 innings, but did not allow a run is because he did not allow a walk, right? And so he did a really good job of allowing those 7 hits, but making sure they did not come around to score and holding Cal Poly to 5 scoreless innings, right? The Longhorns would only allow 3 base runners in the last 4 innings. So shout out to the bullpen coming in, only allowing, I think it was 2 hits and 1 walk in the last 4 innings. So that's really good. Shutting down Cal Poly, who had already been shut down for the entire weekend, right? Peyton Powell, Max Bellew, and Jalen Flores combined for 4 homers and 5 runs combined they combined for 4 homers and 5 runs batted in, 5 RBIs in between the 3rd and 7th innings. And then 2 more runs were scored in the 8th as a result of a pass ball and an RBI single. So really good job in all areas, right? Of, defense. I think they threw out 2 runners in the Sunday game. Pitching, not allowing a run all weekend, of course. And then, batting, you didn't do well on Friday, only scoring 2 runs, but you came back on Saturday and Sunday and scored 6 and 7 runs, respectively. So all 3 phases of the game, they were dominant throughout the weekend. And now you'll play a one-off against St. John's tonight at home in the Dish before traveling down to Houston to play your first game away from the Dish this season for the Astros Foundation Classic. So what's interesting is that the all-time series record of St. John's in Texas is 2-2. So whoever wins tonight will have the edge. So hopefully that's motivation for Texas. As far as the Longhorns being in Houston this weekend, I want to go to a game. I do. But I will say this. 2 years ago, right, when the Longhorns came down to Houston for this tournament, I went to the UCLA game, right? Coming into that game, Texas was either 12-0 or 13-0. They lost their first game that day that I was at. And Tanner Witt was supposed to start that game, but he got scratched. And that's when we realized that he had that injury. It did not pitch for the remainder of the year, I believe, right? So some bad luck, when I went to that UCLA game because Tanner Witt missed the remainder of the season and we lost our first game. So I'm not sure, if I want to go to the ballpark because I just feel like something bad may happen. But, of course, I'm in Houston. The Longhorns baseball team is Houston. It's like automatic that I go, right? So I'll probably go, but if something bad happens, don't blame me, right? Because I still blame myself for that UCLA loss and Tanner Witt getting injured. I don't know why, but I do. All right, a quick word from our sponsors, and then we talk about the Texas basketball team. This should be fun. Not. All right, today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the National Basketball Association. All right, so we're talking about the basketball team. First, I want to, just get like 3 overarching thoughts, really kind of full season thoughts at this point out, and then I'll talk about the Kansas game, right? And I probably won't do too much elaborating on these thoughts because I'm kind of sick to my stomach. All right, so we're talking about the Texas basketball team. Here are the 3 thoughts overarching. I think Rodney Terry earned the job last year. I'm still a Rodney Terry supporter. Rodney Terry earned the job last year. But once you get the job, every day is a battle to prove that you deserve it. Right. And I think up until this point, Rodney Terry has not proved that he deserved the job. Right. I think he's earned it. I think you had to give him the contract based on what he accomplished last year with this Texas basketball team. Right. But I think every day once you get that contract is a battle to prove that you earned it. Right. I think Steve Sarkisian proved that he earned his first contract, and that's why he got an extension. And now moving forward, he has to prove that he earned that extension. Right. I think Rodney Terry earned this job, right? But now he has to prove that he deserves it, right, over time. And I just think so far we haven't seen that. And it's just disheartening. It's like heartbreaking, honestly. Like I know I'm about to get in my feelings a little bit, but it's just disheartening and heartbreaking that every time this Texas team loses, you have to get on social media and see people talking about him being fired or see people talking about we should have suspended Chris Beard instead of firing him who beat up his girlfriend. Like that's the point we're at where we have fans who are begging or still reminiscing about Chris Beard who committed domestic violence, right? Like that's how bad or that's how down people feel about the basketball program right now. And it's disheartening. Like I got on Twitter yesterday. We didn't even play yesterday, right? Like I got on Twitter yesterday and there was a question of like on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your confidence level in Rodney Terry right now? And I don't think there was a single reply that was over a 6. And that's just disheartening, right? That it's like so many people are just ready to move on from Rodney Terry right now. But I have to acknowledge that he earned the job last year, but he has not proven that he deserves to be the head coach at the University of Texas so far throughout his first season on the job. And like I said, it's just disheartening because I think Texas has one of the best fan bases in the world, right? I think Texas has one of the most passionate fan bases in the world. And for the most part, we do a really good job of supporting our own. And for whatever reason with Rodney Terry, it seems like a lot of fans have kind of been one foot out the door on him since he took the job. And he's given them a reason to put that other foot out the door this year. The good wins haven't outweighed the bad losses. We've beaten Oklahoma, Baylor, and TCU while they were ranked. Those are good wins. But we've lost to UConn, Marquette, both of those in pretty, bad fashion. Kansas, Houston twice, BYU, Texas Tech, and 2 blunders in West Virginia and UCF. And to be honest, I don't have a lot of confidence in playing Texas Tech on the road tonight, right? That's going to be a big game for them. They know Texas will likely never play in that building again. They've been camping out for over a week. They're going to come with a lot of intensity, right? And they're going to try to get scoreboard over Texas as Texas moves to the SEC. This team isn't nearly as talented as last year's team. I think that's obvious. But the question remains if Rodney Terry can build a roster that is talented as last year's team. I think he can, but that question still remains. Now, thoughts on the Kansas game. Kansas is the better team, especially at home. But whether they are 19 points better than Texas depends on who you're asking. I did not think they were 19 points better than Texas going into that game. Maybe they are 19 points better than Texas, or maybe Texas is incapable of playing in big games like that and not losing by double digits. I don't know what it is, right? Kansas out-rebounded us by 9, which is a lot, right? Mainly because they shot 62% from the field and shot 27 free throws, right? Kansas only missed 20 shots in this game and got the offensive rebound 8 times, right? So 40% of the shots they missed, they rebounded. That's insane, right? I know it may not sound crazy to everybody. That's insane, right? KJ Adams, Johnny Furphy, and Hunter Dickinson are just 3 players for the Kansas Jayhawks. They had the exact same amount of rebounds as the entire Texas Longhorns basketball team with 25. 9 different players got minutes for the Texas Longhorns. 7 of them outscored Max Asmus. Zarik Onyema only played 3 minutes, so he really doesn't count. The only player that Max Asmus outscored on Saturday that plays in a Texas jersey that got significant minutes for the Texas basketball team was Brock Cunningham. There is no way that Max Asmus, a top 10 scorer in NCAA history, right, and supposed to be the player or your second best player on this basketball team, got outscored by Kendall Weaver, Tyrese Hunter, I.T. Horton, Caden Shedrick. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's crazy, right? Like how, Max Asmus has just fallen off the map, this month, and how in our biggest game of the season, he was our 7th leading scorer. Max Asmus was our 7th leading scorer, right? Story of the game was Kansas made everything look easy. Every shot Texas takes is difficult. Texas couldn't defend without fouling. And once again, we were punished on the board. So, I'll watch the game tonight against Texas Tech. I don't have a lot of faith that we can win that game. I think Texas Tech comes out and plays out of their minds. Hopefully, Texas can match that based on what we've seen this season. I'm not sure that that's going to happen, right? And like I said, Rodney Terry earned the job last year, but now you have to prove that you deserve the job day in and day out. And I just don't think that, 25, close to 30 games into the season, Rodney Terry has done that yet. He still has time to do it, and I still have faith that he will turn things around. But I understand every question mark that the fans have about the future of this Texas basketball program at the moment. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.